Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Skinwalker appears twice in Canyon to Chelly, Arizona. There are lots of rumors out there about skinwalkers. Maybe I don't believe them. Maybe I think that coming from a different tribe makes me immune to their evil. Regardless of what I believe, there are things I have seen in the lonely places of Arizona that I cannot explain. The business of my family often takes us deep into the Navajo Reservation and lends us to spending the night in a hotel or at a friend's place. However superstitious or practical you are, there can be no argument that those desolate desert roads are not always safe for travelers and locals alike after the sun sets. I know many people who have had dangerous encounters. On a trip to visit a relative near Canyon de Chelly, we decided to attend an evening rug auction that took us a couple hours out of town. I was riding with my friend Jen, whose mother we were visiting. I would like to make a note that Jen is not the most stalwart of souls and is one of the more superstitious native people I know. On previous driving excursions, she has begged me to stop the car and take a different route after noticing an owl flying towards the road. I didn't stop. Owls are generally good luck for my people, and in any case, I don't put much stock in omens. Anyhow, the auction hadn't ended by 9 p.m. or so, and Jen and I were getting antsy. We opted to head back to her mother's place early and let the rest of the family catch up with us. As Jen drove the two of us home on the empty 2-lane road, we quickly left all semblance of civilization behind for sheer night, which seemed even blacker in the shadow of the canyons. Jen had settled on the least fuzzy FM station she could find, and I was staring aimlessly out the window. That's when I noticed the dog. At first it was just a flash of white in the corner of my vision, and then I craned my neck to get a good look. A big white German Shepherd was running parallel to our car, about 100 yards off the road and a little behind us. Something about it made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I knew we must have been going 40 or 45 miles per hour, but it was gaining on us. I could feel my heart rate pick up while I stared at it. As it came perpendicular to us, it began to draw up off of its front feet until it was running on 2 legs like a human. When it turned its head to look at me, my stomach dropped. Even from that distance I was sure I could see a red glint to its eyes, and a feeling of dread washed over me. I must have made a noise because Jen touched my leg and asked what was wrong. I glanced at her wordlessly and then gestured out the window, but as I turned back, the dog was gone. Not wanting to scare her, I told her the dark was playing tricks on me and closed my eyes, determined to sleep the rest of the way home. The next night, after a lot of food and even more visiting, I had holed up in my room to get ready for bed. I was staying in the second floor of the house and my window overlooked the street. The houses are fairly spread out, but the road is lined with street lamps, the nearest of which is less than a block away on the opposite side. I turned out my light and went to the window to pull down the shades so the light wouldn't keep me up. Fear hit me like a sucker punch when my eyes drifted across the road. There in the light of the street lamp was the German Shepherd. It was standing on its hind legs in a way that I knew canine anatomy should not allow, and it was staring straight back at me. From that close, it was obvious that it had deep red eyes and fur that was a yellowish white. I don't know how long we watched each other. I knew better than to stare it in the eyes, but I was too terrified to turn away. Finally, it dropped down to all fours and walked away. I slept with a knife next to my bed and the bedroom door locked that night. Some part of me thinks it was a skinwalker that I saw, a witch out hunting for trouble. I haven't been back to Canyon de Chelly. GB.
Skinwalker from the Navajo Reservation. I dated a Navajo guy for 3.5 years when I was in college. We would go back to the res pretty frequently to visit his family or for holidays. It is taboo for them to talk about it, but I was able to get the ex-boyfriend to tell me a lot of stories and lore about skinwalkers because I was really fascinated by them, and I guess he wasn't too scared to tell me. Every person in his family had their own skinwalker experiences, and they were normal, honest people. It's not something they would make up. So I 100% believe skinwalkers exist. I possibly had experiences, like hearing footsteps on the roof and thinking I heard chanting coming from outside the window, but I guess so much time has passed there's room for doubt in my mind now. The one definite experience I had, which still, I'm the only person who didn't definitively see the Skinwalker. My ex-boyfriend and his family were driving on the road between their houses and the city in a kind of convoy, pretty late at night. Car 1, boyfriend and me. Car 2, boyfriend's sister and her kids. Car 3, boyfriend's younger brother. Car 2, the sister calls and says to pull over because there's something running alongside her car. All 3 vehicles pull over on the side of the road. She's frightened because she looked outside her window, and there was a Skinwalker running beside her, but the kids didn't see it. The younger brother saw it too because he was behind them. We're all standing overlooking a small valley with very little coverage. Boyfriend and younger brother pull out their guns and decide to shoot to see if they can scare whatever it was. When they shoot, something in the valley does take off running, but it's too far for me to tell what it is. That's as close as I ever was to seeing one. I always kept my eyes peeled when we were driving on the back roads. And it's been so long, 7 to 9 years, since I've heard everyone else's stories that I feel like I wouldn't do them justice. AR.
Possible Skinwalker encounter. I haven't really heard many stories of Native American Skinwalkers, so I thought I would share my experience. My sighting happened in the summer of 2007 when I was working the night shift at a surface coal mining facility. I used to drive a coal hauling truck which was pretty huge and required a series of steps just to climb into the cab. I just completed my pre-shift inspection and I noticed that my radiator was leaking. I called my supervisor and he asked me to drive the truck to the shop. The shop was about 6 miles to the north from the coal pits, which was located in a remote part of the Navajo Reservation. I drove the truck to the shop, called the shop foreman, and he radio requested that I park the truck at the south side of the shop. I parked the truck and I lowered the ladder and I descended the ladder. I wanted to see how much fluid was left in the radiator. So I lowered the rear ladder and climbed into the engine compartment. The leak was pretty bad, so I climbed down the ladder, and that is when I saw the Skinwalker. It was the weirdest thing that I've ever seen. I seen it was about 200 feet from me. It was walking around the other mining equipment. It looked like a huge dog. The fur was beige in color, and it walked on all 4 legs. The coat was pretty patchy, missing clumps of fur and bald spots. It smelled really bad, like a rotting roadside corpse. It had seen me and started to walk towards me. I pulled out my flashlight, and I noticed that the dog's eyes did not reflect any light. Its eyes were black and lifeless. Its head made a bobbing motion, and it was walking towards me. Its head was huge. It looked like a bull mastiff, which was my first impression. I initially thought, this is a huge dog, and it's probably sick and hungry. It got to within 20 feet of me and I pulled out my pocket knife. I was ready to defend myself if this thing wanted to attack. I started to walk carefully towards the shop and I kept my eyes on the creature. It followed me, paralleled my every step. Its walk wasn't natural and fluid like a normal dog. It moved in an unnatural way. I walked about 150 yards to the shop and it kept its distance. I finally got to the shop and the Skinwalker stopped at the driveway of the shop bay doors. I went inside and I told the shop foreman and to come see this weird looking dog. And we both went outside to see it walk away from the shop and turn around the corner of the building. A few seconds later, my supervisor drove around that very corner and I asked him if he had seen that weird looking animal. He said that he didn't see it. I told him that he had to have seen it. He drove in the very direction that it walked off towards. I described what I had seen, and my supervisor said that it was a Skinwalker. That night, my supervisor made me ride with him throughout the rest of the night shift. He opened me up to a world and told me of his experiences while he worked at the mine. I haven't had any more experiences since that encounter, but I've seen mysterious lights around the mining area that didn't make any noises.
Possible Skinwalker-related incident. I'm a 16-year-old girl who lives in Utah. I'm Navajo and half Mandan Hidatsa. I have been curious to see what other Skinwalker stories are about and I can kind of relate. My family never mentioned Skinwalkers or witches to me, so I knew nothing about them. My grandpa died a few months ago this summer, so my parents sent me to live with my grandma to help her around her ranch. Well, I brought my cat along. His name is Cheese. Well, just after 2 weeks of living there, my cat went missing. I figured that he would come back, but he never did. I called him and looked for him, but nothing. So I went to go put some hay behind the barn for the horses when I saw my orange cat's remains. I thought maybe something attacked him like a coyote, so I picked it up, and I saw that there were no bones, just skin, and the outside of his fur. There was red and yellow, even white paint on the outside of him. I couldn't figure out what it was. I buried him behind a hill with a little stone with his name carved on it. I was so heartbroken. My grandma said she could get me a new cat, but I didn't want a new cat. Soon enough I kept hearing meows outside the hogan and scratches at the door. My grandma doesn't have any other cats, so I would open the door and find nothing. And when I went to go check on my cat's grave and dig it up to make sure he was still there, he was gone, but his bones were there. I just couldn't believe it. Why were his bones there? I thought I buried his skin. And ever since I lived there and experienced some of the strangest things in my life, I don't want to go back and live there. I can't even share what kind of crazy things happened to me, because from there I drew the line. I was confused and scared about these people, but at the same time I knew I was one of these people. I have a greater respect for the Navajo people, which is why I don't think getting involved with skinwalkers is a good idea. Just don't mess with them and they won't mess with you.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.